Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We are midway through the 2022 season. Record is 38 and 42, 12 and a half games back, last place in the AL Central. Actually, our record is surprisingly good, given that since taking over the team a few months ago, we have traded away Salvador Perez, Adalberto Mondesi, Carlos Santana, and Zach Greinke. So 4 of the biggest contracts on the team are gone, but also 4 of the most talented players that were on the team are gone. But we've held in reasonably well with the youth movement that we have started. And we're in a good position financially. Once again, after trading away Perez most recently, we've got a lot of money available, despite the fact that we also beefed up our scouting budget and our development budget before the season started. Not a ton that we can do with that money. The only thing that I have thought about is we got a couple of months ago, Nicky Lopez signed through an extension that takes him past his arbitration years. Obviously, I think it will be good for our relationship with ownership and hopefully getting a bigger budget going forward if we show a profit this year. But I'm also considering spending a decent chunk of that money maybe into a front-loaded contract for another one of the younger players that we'd like to sign for the long term. If we can use up a little extra money this year and then have them a few $1 million less a season down the line, that could be the difference for this team in terms of being able to make a key free agent acquisition when we think we're about at the point where we're in win now mode. So going to do a little exploring. Not going to come back right to Bobby Witt Jr. right now, as we made him a couple of longer term offers before he had even played in the majors, and he didn't bite on either of those. But given that we have made the commitment to MJ Melendez as our catcher of the future, going to try to see if we can lock him up at a reasonable contract. Very good defensive catcher, great influence in the clubhouse with his captain personality, high leadership, work ethic, and intelligence. He's never going to be a great contact hitter, never going to draw a ton of walks or do a great job avoiding strikeouts, but he's not horrible at any of those things either, and looks like he certainly could have plus home run power and plus gap power. So definitely someone who at only 23 years old we could be building around for the better part of the next decade. So I'm going to try to see if maybe we can get Melendez locked up in a somewhat front-loaded contract and buy out a lot of his, not a lot of his, but some of his free agency years potentially. And obviously, we're in the very early stages of Melendez's career, but we are going to have control of him for the next 7 seasons, including this season, since we brought him up not all that long ago. He's not going to get a full year of service this year. You can see the projections for him, 2.6, 4.6, 6.5, and 8.5 million are definitely manageable. I would think that if we offered him, exactly what he anticipates through arbitration for the next 6 extension seasons, plus a couple others, we've got a chance at getting him. I think in terms of the money, it's really just a question of whether he wants to sign an extension right now. And you can see he's only thinking 1 year right now, so it may not be easy, but we'll put an offer out there that's very front-loaded. Maybe the big money up front will attract him to the deal, or it's just going to say, hey, yeah, I'd love a 1-year contract at $8 million, which we won't give him, by the way. So I doubt that Melendez is going to go for this at 23 years old, but we have a 10-year, $55 million contract, so averaging $5.5 million a year would take us through the next 6 years when he's arbitration eligible or just on a initial contract, and also 4 free agent years. I think we're definitely light on this. Just want to see if he has any interest in all in engaging on a longer-term contract, or he just wants to sign a 1-year deal. And he's really not interested in a long-term deal right now. So that's fine. The other option we have would be to look at our buddy Nick Pratto. The issue there is, he's a first baseman, so a lot of different people can play first base. Does look like he's got a nice batting profile. He's going to strike out, but it seems like he's going to make sufficient contact and have plus power, home run power, and eye. If you look at the OSA ratings, looks like he even might have a little more gap power, a little less home run power potentially than we think, but good person in the clubhouse also, so may try to lock him up, but I don't think I even want to pay as much for him as I was willing to pay for Melendez. So we'll see what his arbitration projections are right now. Obviously, it's very early for me to be having these kind of conversations, which probably doesn't help. It's just that we have money now. Yeah, and you can see Pratto out into the future in the arbitration years is 2.2, 3.6, 5, and 6.5, which is lower than where Melendez was significantly in any year. So, if we can get him on a contract that's kind of on a similar track to that and get a couple of arbitration years out of him, I think it makes sense, particularly if we can front load it a bit now so we've got money potentially saved down the line if we want to try to keep a Melendez or a Bobby Witt Jr. or we want to kind of add a free agent down the line. So we'll give it a shot. Not all that optimistic and don't feel as strongly that Pratto needs to be a key part of this team for the next decade as strongly as I do with Melendez and Witt Jr. right now. But we'll sign who we can if we can get a front-loaded contract that we think is going to be pretty attractive for the team a few years down the line. So with Pratto, we're going to offer him $38 million over 8 years, front-loaded with $8 million in this next season, and then less after that. We'll see what happens. I mean, obviously, it's not even actually letting us use the cash that we have this year, but I'm hoping that if we do good financially, it'll put us in a situation where management's going to open up more money for us next year, and obviously prefer to front load these contracts if we can. And he's interested, so I don't have a problem potentially trying to build around Pratto for the next 8 years, especially when he's in his late 20s and 30s. It's going to be a very manageable contract for the Royals. So let's see if we can get him signed to an extension. And of course, as I'm thinking about things, I was talking about the money for free agents this year, but obviously if we sign someone to an extension, that's not going to kick into next year. So you can see our extension money is potentially lower now with the offer to Pratto. So really the only way to use up a lot of this money this year is going to be if we get into the draft within the next week and decide to sign some players that are looking for more money. So that could be the way that we spend a little bit of extra money, hopefully, in the coming weeks. Until then, we're just going to sim ahead to the draft and see whether we can get Pratto locked up. And we have gotten Nick Pratto signed, so that's one step in the right direction for the number 32 prospect in baseball. He is set up to be our first baseman for the better part of the next decade. Going to make $700,000 this year, and then you can see going to be making a lot more than he would have for the next few seasons. But by the time he gets towards the end of those arbitration years and then his first couple free agency years, hopefully will be a lot more economical for us to own at that point. Not own, but have on the roster at that point than he is right now. So here's hoping that he meets his true potential and can be a key member of our batting order for the next 9 seasons or 8.5 seasons at this point. You can see he's good results so far, 9 homers and 33 runs batted in his first 189 at-bats at the major league level with a 128 OPS plus. So happy to have Pratto on board as our first baseman of the future. And the amateur draft is about to get underway. You can see the top players: Drew Jones, Christian Noriega, Cole Young, Judson Fabian, Tamar Johnson, Jacob Berry, Robert Moore, Dylan Lesko, Chase DeLauder, and Dominic Keegan are viewed as the top 10. We are going to be picking ninth, so we will certainly have our pick of at least two, if not more, of these rumored top 10 players by BNN. And we've simmed ahead to our pick: Dylan Lesko, Drew Jones, Elijah Greene, Tamar Johnson, Robert Moore, Chase DeLauder, Gavin Turley, and Brandon Barreria are the picks that happened ahead of us. So now we get to dig into the pool and see who we might want to bring on board. And our scouting director, Lonnie Goldberg, suggests that we take Jason Jones, 18-year-old, almost 19-year-old third baseman, high school player. Not looking for a ton of money, only a $750,000 bonus demand. Can see potentially has incredible gap power. The rest of his in good home run power potentially. The rest of his batting profile is pretty average. Looks like he could be a acceptable defensive third baseman. At 6'2", he could also probably play first base. He has played a little bit of catcher in the day, but his catcher ability and catcher arm aren't anything that suggests that that's where we'd want him for the long term. He is one of only three-star potential players left, so we'll take a look at a few of the others and spend a little time and let you know whether we're going to go with what our scout recommends or in a different direction. Just doing a real rough search on the players with a top power potential. Jason Jones does have one of the better profiles of the players available in the draft. The guy that I'm kind of really intrigued by is Nazir Mule, who is a starting pitcher, but you can see he actually has a interesting potential batting profile. As a pitcher, I don't think he's really going to make it. Maybe he becomes a reliever. But you look at his potential batting ratings, plus contact, plus gap power, and plus power with potentially a acceptable eye and avoiding Ks. He's someone that I will think about in the coming rounds. I don't think I want to reach for him in the first round. I think Jason Jones is probably the safest pick out there as I've looked at people. But I'm not incredibly excited about him at number 9. Brooks Bryan, the catcher, if he was a better actual catcher, maybe. And then looking at the pitchers, I'll take a look at the pitching potential, see if anybody really stands out there with some incredible stuff. And T.J. Brock, who's a reliever, does, but probably not going to take a reliever in the first round. Kumar Rocker definitely stands out a bit just with the movement potential. He is going to be looking for $10 million. Obviously, what happened with him in the Mets last year is well known, and it doesn't look like his profile is maybe as good as it would have been in the game a year ago, which I guess makes sense given the potential injury concerns that now surround him. But he's still listed in a normal injury proneness, still his 3 good to excellent pitches. So he's a guy that I'd think about, but number 9 pick of the draft, maybe not. Again, if he's there when we get to the second round, and I think we may actually have a pick between the first and second round to make things interesting. But I don't think he's the right guy for the number 9 pick in the draft this year. So, not thrilled with the way the pool looks for us right now, quite honestly. But, we'll have to decide who makes sense to bring on board. And I'm kind of at this point leaning towards Jason Jones. And I think we will go ahead and make the high schooler our selection. Very low bonus demand, which helps. Again, this is probably the one year that Kansas City has tons of money to spend on bonuses, but maybe that allows us to come back and pick a rocker in the second round if he's still around and pay a lot more for him than we would normally be paying for a second round choice. So we are going to meet his demand And he is the first draft pick we've had, obviously. And we'll auto-draft again until our next pick, which is a supplemental pick, the 5th pick of the supplemental. Let's see who's still out there for us. And Nazir Mule, who the starting pitcher, who I think we could potentially turn into certainly a third baseman, first baseman with his height, corner outfielder. You know, there's definitely options for him, and he looks like he could have a plus bat. His bonus demand is unknown. His signability is viewed as impossible. That to me just means maybe we take a flyer at him in the next round if he's still around and don't really try to push for him here. Looking at what our scouting director recommends, Yoel Tejada Jr., first baseman. We actually looked at him for the first round. You know, really good potential home run power, a decent eye, never going to make a ton of contact. 6'7", so he certainly has the physical range to play first base. Really don't see him as anything except a first baseman. I guess, you know, you could play him at third base in a pinch, but they're only projecting that he can get to a 40 there. But he's only looking for a relatively modest bonus too, so he would be a pretty easy signing, but want to take a look at the pitchers first. And it does look like Kumar Rocker has been picked, so that will potentially prevent us from maybe reaching on him. Where did he go? Okay, he went with the first supplemental pick here to Colorado, so almost had a shot at him, but not quite, which is fine. I think we are going to go back and Yoel Tejada Jr., you know, potential first baseman for us down the line. Really couldn't play corner outfield. You know, he's going to be either a first baseman, a DH, or a very mediocre third baseman. Does have good adaptability, so, you know, perhaps he can learn some of those positions down the line if he needs to. Like the home run power, it's just a question of whether he's going to make contact enough to be a real useful player to us. I think we're going to go ahead and take him. Again, the 1 year that the Royals have tons of money to potentially spend on players. Our first two guys, their bonus demands are really low, but hopefully there will be some players that kind of drop in the draft because of crazy demands, and maybe we can pick up some of them in the later rounds. On to our next pick here in the second round, and the recommendation, Daniel Susak, catcher from the University of Arizona. Again, a very manageable demand. You know, looks like a borderline acceptable defensive catcher who can kind of be a borderline acceptable major league hitter. You know, second round of the draft, maybe that's the best that we can do, but we're going to search a little more and see what we can come up with before pulling the trigger on what our scout believes we should do. I'm not going to lie, I'm intrigued by the bat of Nazir. I've been calling him Mule. Maybe it's Mule. I don't know. If anyone knows, let me know. 17-year-old with potential for a interesting bat. He's committed to the University of Miami. Signability is viewed as impossible. Bonus demand is unknown. But as I've talked about, we've spent so little money on each of our first two draft choices, our number one pick and our first round supplemental pick. We can kind of reach for him. Obviously, the hope would be that we can get him signed, but if we failed on that as a second rounder, we will at least get a draft pick back next year. I'm kind of inclined to go with the player who I think is the most upside of any offensive player right in the draft at this point, and kind of looking at the power potential of the players out there, you know, coupled with you know, as good power potential as anyone out there, with the best gap power and the best contact of anyone kind of who still has good home run power. the eye and the avoiding Ks aren't going to be great, but even when you search by contact, he's as good as anybody out there. I think we're going to pick up Nazir and hope that we can convince him to sign with us rather than going off to the U, and that we can also, potentially get him to give up his starting pitching aspirations and potentially become a everyday player for us. Again, I think he'd be an acceptable corner infielder or corner outfielder, and with that bat, he could certainly work at DH. So may regret doing this if we can't get him signed, but we are going to draft him and take a risk on it. And this is the benefit of having our first 2 picks be real low dollars that we were looking for. We can potentially throw a bunch of stupid money at him and bring him on board. On to our 3rd round pick. Scouts recommend Grant J, a high school catcher. It's like best case scenario, kind of a average major league hitting profile. Pretty rough personality. He's got a bad temper, low leadership, loyalty, work ethic, and intelligence. Not that great defensively as a catcher. I think we're definitely not going to be going in that direction. Definitely going to break from what Lonnie is recommending we do with this pick. We've obviously kind of missed out on top pitchers given that we're into the 3rd round, and we've gone with 3 players who are kind of corner infielders or corner outfielders. You can see there's not really any high school aged pitchers available. 29-year-old Samuel Melendez. Definitely not going to be picking a 29-year-old in the 3rd round of the draft, but interesting that someone that old is in the draft. And looking for a recommendation of a starting pitcher from our scout, suggests Will Frisch from Oregon State. 3 really nice pitches, but average stuff, below average movement and control. He is a leader. He's almost 22, throwing 95 to 97 miles an hour. Maybe can get that a little better. He's one of the highest potential starters out there at this point, for whatever that's worth. There's a few 2.5-star kind of starting pitchers out there at this point, and he's one of them. You can see the youngest one is 20 years old here with Andrew Taylor, though, who has 4 solid pitches and is going to be kind of just trying to hang on with his stuff, his movement and control. Not all that exciting with the guys that are available at this point in the draft, unfortunately. I think I'm going to go with Frisch after looking at the other players. Nothing too exciting there. The thing I like about him is his 3 pitches are really good. Got a good personality. Just don't know if he's ever going to have enough movement and control and stuff to really excel. I mean, it seems like he could certainly be a major league pitcher, particularly for the Royals within the next 2 to 3 seasons. But is he going to be anything better than a 4th or 5th starter? He's probably going to need to get some unexpected boost to his stuff, his control, and or his movement to really, really achieve that. But we are going to give him a try. His bonus demand is a little over slot. We'll offer him slot first. He probably won't accept that, and then we'll hopefully figure it out with him on the other end. And we're on to the 4th round. Scout recommends another college starter, Preston Johnson. Not a dissimilar profile to Frisch. He has 4 pitches instead of 3, but they're not as good. But again, his stuff is movement and control, all kind of look average-ish. Throws around 95. I'm okay going with him. I think at this point it's just getting as many shots on goal as possible with some of these college-age starting pitchers and hope that, if we bring 4 or 5 of them on board in the next few rounds of the draft, that, one of them ends up being better than we expect at this point. So we are going to go ahead. He's looking for recommended slot. We'll meet his demand, and on to the 5th round. And I'm going to stop going through pick by pick now that we've made 5 picks in the first 4 rounds, but obviously we'll check in if I see something interesting. Jacob Miller here is intriguing to me a little bit, only because he's a high schooler. He's got 5 potential pitches. None of them are all that great, and his stuff, his movement and control don't stand out. Definitely not going to take him this round, but would consider that eventually, just because there's a lot of diversity there with 5 pitches. If a couple of them develop, he's also younger than a lot of the other people that we've looked at. But we're kind of getting to the point of the draft where it's going to be more just kind of hope than a lot of confidence that the picks that we're making are going to have a big impact on the big league roster over the next decade. And we are down to the 11th round of the draft now. I think we're going to take Brooks Bryan, the catcher. Don't think he's ever going to be a great defensive catcher. Low leadership, high greed, does have home run power. He's got more power than anybody left in the draft at this point, just kind of looking for lottery tickets that maybe can develop into something. And I think that his leading power potential with a decent eye and acceptable gap power, he's the way we're going to go at this point. So we've made it to the end of the draft, with Jason Jones and Yoel Tejada Jr. in our first round picks. Not a ton of money from them. We do have the potential to throw a lot of money here at Nazir Mule, is how I'm calling him. Tyler Bosman, Lucas Kelly, some later picks, looking for big money, but nothing out of the ordinary. I think we just want to get these guys signed. The question is how much we offer the 17-year-old that we want to move away from being a pitcher. They say it's impossible. But we've got money, so we're going to make offers to these 2 guys, hopefully get them locked up, and then see how much we can potentially spend. And with Nazir Mule, he wants a bonus significantly above $9.5 million to consider signing. Recommended slot is 2.1. We've got budget room of $32 million for signing bonuses and contracts. His patience is running very low. I'm going to give him a good offer. He wants significantly over 9.5. I mean, even if we spend $12.5 million for him, we're only going to be barely above the draft budget that we had set, and we're only going to use a little bit of this massive surplus that we have. I guess we're going to find out. I very rarely, if ever, get into these situations where you've got a player who just wants a crazy demand and he wants something significantly above it, but this is the year where let's see how he reacts to $12.5 million. To me, that's significantly above $9.5 million. We'll see what Nazir thinks. And the team has not been playing so well here over the last couple of weeks. Record just 41-51 now. All-Stars were announced. Reliever Taylor Clark on the All-Star team for the Kansas City Royals here in 2022. First-time All-Star. Has pitched 65 2/3 innings for us with a 2.06 ERA, 2.05 ERA plus, 73 FIP minus, 2.89 Sierra. So really nice year for him. 5-0 with 1 save. And then we have a second All-Star, Bobby Witt Jr., who did not let his delayed start keep him out of the American League All-Star game. Through 65 games, 16 homers, 46 runs batted in, hitting .262 with a 121 OPS plus and 2.6 WAR already. So very happy to see the young third baseman get the opportunity to play in the All-Star game as a rookie. And we got Nazir Mule signed, the 17-year-old. You may remember he was looking for an insane amount of money, said we had to be significantly over $9.5 million. Given that both of our first-round picks were way below slot and under $1 million between them, we actually had the money to do it. So happy to have him on board. We are going to immediately change him from a pitcher to probably an outfield prospect, but you can see with his contact, gap, and power potential, he could end up being a pretty interesting player for us. We're going to put him out in left field to start and see how he does there, and also make sure that we're not using him as a two-way player. We just want him to bat for us. So yeah, we've switched him to left field. He's not going to be used as a two-way player. We'll see what he develops into for us over the years. This was the one thing that kind of trading away a lot of contracts and then also going a little less expensive with our 2 first-rounders allowed us to take a flyer on this guy. So we'll see what happens with him over the coming years. And as we get close to the trade deadline, the big decision is just whether we want to get any of the more expensive contracts off of our team. Andrew Benintendi going to be a free agent. A decent hitting profile, but has had a modest season for us with 7 homers and 30 runs driven in, 255 batting average, 103 OPS plus. We're not locked into him for next year regardless, and presumably if he's looking for anything near $9 million next year, wouldn't be bringing him back. Hunter Dozier is a more interesting decision. His contract's going to go up to $7.2 million next year. Basically an average kind of offensive profile. He does have a lot of position versatility, which is nice, high work ethic, which is nice. But you can see, even for this team, he's kind of a utility player. Only started 44 games, batting .217, 69 OPS plus. I'd like to not be paying him $7.2 million next year and then $9 million in 2024. So I think we may look to move on from him. Whit Merrifield, another older player. I'd say a slightly better overall hitting profile, although he doesn't have much home run power is all, but has been an all-star for the Orioles a couple times in recent years. Also has a strong work ethic and also a very versatile offensive player. So given that it's a team option for us with him next year and he's hitting much better, I think we're going to see if we can get anything for Hunter Dozier, because I really don't want to have that contract on the books next year. And nobody has offered us anything in terms of prospects or regulars for Dozier without us keeping some of his salary. So let's see if we bump it up to 30%. Is there anyone who's even interested, or would we have to pay more than that? Hunter Renfroe. Okay, so another pretty big contract would be coming back our way, but better offensive player. But what is that contract really? Actually, the contract is done after this year, and he's arbitration eligible. I don't know that we want to be spending $8 million on him next year. The one thing this could kind of do for us is that ownership wanted us to upgrade at right field. I think he's a very modest upgrade at right field, if that, but let's kind of see what ownership is thinking about it at this point. Yeah, Whit Merrifield has been playing right for us. They kind of think, in the yellow range, not all that exciting. I don't know how much better he is. The nice thing about Renfroe is that we're not committed to him for next year. We could always just trade him away or decline arbitration. So it kind of helps us get that contract from Dozier off the books, who's going to be $7+ million next year and then $9 million the year after before we can get out with the team option. And Renfroe's actually a little bit better hitter right now, I would say. So I'm going to try to work up something there. Obviously wouldn't mind if I can add in a middling prospect or two to get the amount of money that we need to retain down. So we're going to have some discussions with the Brewers. And actually, the Brewers are good with the deal all the way down to us just retaining only 10%. So it's really just if we go to 5 or 0 that we might need to add somebody. Let's see how it looks. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of options here. I'm pretty sure we can find somebody who doesn't fit in our long-term plans to throw into the deal, and then we are clear and away from Hunter Dozier's contract, which will be positive for us, and then we can decide whether or not we want to re-up with Hunter Renfroe in the offseason. You know, it's going to spend some money on arbitration with him, so probably we'll move on, but maybe we can get a little bit for him in a trade at that point. And we did have to add in left fielder Peyton Wilson. Versatile defensive player. He can catch, play second, play all the outfield positions, but just doesn't look like he's ever going to have enough of a bat to really have much of an impact at the major league level. He's at high A this year where he's hitting 280, so he's having a decent year at high A, but almost 23 years old and hasn't gotten above high A. So to get Dozier's contract off, we are, I wouldn't say happy to throw him in, but willing to throw him in. So Hunter Dozier, thanks for your service to the Royals, but we are going to move on from your contract. And as luck would have it, Mike Matheny is going to be using Hunter Renfroe at DH against righties and in left field against lefties. So although he's listed as a right fielder, and we've been asked to upgrade right field given that he's not going to get much action there, probably not going to help us with ownership all that much, but it is what it is. And looking at the rest of the team, Brad Keller having a pretty solid year for us. Could certainly bring him at his $5 million arbitration number next year. Renfroe, happy to have him in the lineup here. Whit Merrifield, I like him in the team option. Is expensive, but it's not something that we couldn't possibly do. So I think really the only question is whether we want to do anything with Benintendi. And again, we don't need to because he's a free agent after this year. I think the question with him is just whether we can actually get anything for him. If someone will give us something for him, even if it's just one prospect, I think we'll move on from him. I'm guessing there's not going to be a ton of interest, but we'll see. All right, there's stuff out there. I'll take a look. Maybe there's something interesting in here that will be better for us for the long term than having Benintendi on the team, since we're probably not going to be re-signing him in the offseason. And the first thing that obviously sticks out is OOTP legend Austin Hedges with his 80 catcher ability and 75 catcher arm. That great personality, making $4 million this year, and he's going to be a free agent after this season. I guess there's an argument: do we bring him on board and then maybe try to re-sign him, hope that he likes things here, given that we just made a pretty big commitment trading away Perez and turning the catcher position over to Melendez. He's not as good defensively as Austin Hedges. There's been some talk that catcher defense has been nerfed a bit in this version of OOTP 23 anyways, so from that perspective maybe don't need to chase him as much, but interesting that he's the first guy out there. There's actually a few interesting pitchers offered to us for Benintendi. We may have to look at one of these guys. Sean Dubin from the Astros is one. listed as a reliever, but with his 50 stamina and 4 pitches, he has actually, started a fair number of games in AAA the last couple years. Has really good stuff. His movement and control aren't great, but definitely seems like an option as a spot starter for us at the very least with, a few good pitches. The one that's really interesting to me is 23-year-old Jose Suarez from the Angels. Slightly above average stuff and movement, average control, 5 pitches. The issue is that we're waiting for an injury diagnosis on Suarez, so I would definitely want to see how bad that injury is before potentially pulling the trigger there. And then also from the Angels, Brett Carey, 23-year-old. His 4 pitches, really good control. His stuff and movement, not incredible. Good loyalty, work ethic, and intelligence. Good personality. Recently moved up to AAA for the first time. Definitely going to keep an eye on what happens with this Suarez injury, but I think given that we're not going anywhere this year and we're not going to be re-signing Benintendi, if I can bring in another guy that may become a solid major league starter, I've got to try to do it. Waited a couple days to see what the issue with Suarez's injury is. Shoulder inflammation, out for 3 to 4 months, so he is done for the year. I still like his profile, and he's on the 60-day IL, so I think that means he's not going to be even accruing any more service time, which means that I think he'll still be on a $700,000 contract for next season. He's an interesting pitcher to me for a guy that we're going to get rid of next year anyways. It seems worth taking a flyer on the guy to me. The other interesting thing is that the Angels offered us Noah Syndergaard already. Obviously, that would be a huge contract for the Royals to take on. Another couple years at $22 million plus a year. Obviously, a one-time brilliant pitcher. Has been good with the Angels this year. 5-4, 3.46 ERA. ERA plus of 120. So he's still been very good this year. We just can't possibly afford him. If the Angels were willing to keep a massive amount of his salary, sure, but I don't think they're going to do that. Will you guys retain 90%? Prove you're serious by making a better offer. Okay. Will you retain 80%? Unless you can do better, this conversation is over. All right, well, we're not that interested in Syndergaard, but had to give it a shot. I think I'm going to make the trade for Jose Suarez and take. I don't feel like shoulder inflammation is going to have just ruined his career. Shut him down, put him on the 60-day injured list, and we'll see in spring training. A lefty, a little bit above average stuff and movement, average control, and 5 pitches, 4 of which are above average, a really good changeup, and an acceptable slider at the major league level. He's put up a 91 ERA plus at the major league level and a 112 FIP minus, so he hasn't been spectacular, but has been consistently getting better. 115 last year, 143 this year in terms of his ERA pluses, and his FIP minus has trended from 98 to 86, and he's only going to be 25 next year. I think I'd kick myself if we didn't do this deal, so I'm going to see if we can get a little more out of the Angels, but presumably they are in the playoff hunt, and although they're 10.5 behind the A's, but they're leading for the wild card. So, yeah, I'm sure they can use Benintendi's bat, but and Suarez is done for them now for the year, so he's of no use to them. So we get a potential starter for the future, and the Angels get a bat to try to help them win this year. Seems like a win-win to me. And we were able to get a little teeny bit more out of the Angels, which is fine. We had to add in the starting pitcher, Anthony Simonelli, 23-year-old, playing in rookie ball this year for us, so probably not a huge future. And we get Davis Daniel, who is a 25-year-old in AAA this year. Again, probably never going to be a huge impact at the major league level, but a better pitcher than the guy we're giving up, and they also added in a couple $100,000. JJ says he's all for sealing this deal, so am I. So we're going to bring on Suarez and see if maybe he can turn into something for us next year. And the trade of Benintendi will allow us to bring Alec Boehm back up. You may remember we sent him down to the minors, primarily just so he could learn how to play first base, since we didn't have a spring training this year, give him a little more positional versatility, and you can see that he has played there a lot. So we are going to take forcing him at first base out of his strategy and bring him up to the major league roster as another bat to replace Benintendi. Looking at the pitching staff, no real changes there. Let's see what the lineup looks like after all of those changes. Boehm goes right into the starting lineup at first base. Interesting. Prado playing DH, and then Boehm is going to be our starting first baseman against lefties too. So, hey, it may work out with Boehm, Prado, and Bobby Witt Jr. Maybe we have first base, third base, and DH covered for the next several years. So now with all of the trades we made, we've got massive amounts of money available for free agents this year, and our payroll is down to 29th in the game. I guess I'll take a quick look at the trade block, if I could speak. There's always a chance we could just pick up somebody who is a really good player, pay him for a year, get a little boost in the standings and a little boost with the fans. I don't think it's realistic for us to be thinking about sneaking into the wild card, and we really haven't even been trying, and we're 9 games out at this point. So, certainly not anything that's expected. But actually, you look at some of the teams that we're ahead of in the American League East, though, the American League, the Rays, the Blue Jays, the Astros, and the Red Sox are all worse than Kansas City in 2022. Wow. Crazy year here in the American League. Got the White Sox on top, which was expected, but the A's being 10.5 up on the Angels, not expected. Yankees in the AL East, not a shock, but Orioles being closer than the Rays, Blue Jays, or Red Sox is just wild. With the Red Sox being out of it, they're looking to trade Nathan Eovaldi in the final year of his contract. I can't imagine we really want to do this. They would want Melendez or Witt Jr. for him. Sorry, no thanks. I thought you were just trying to do a salary dump there, Boston, but I guess there probably are teams that would be looking for him to help them in the pennant push, but that's not something we're seriously thinking about. We are going to make one trade with the Yankees. Chad Greene, the odds of us making the playoffs are extremely remote, but they're going to keep 60% of his salary, and all they're looking for is Ryan Grotjohn, who's a 27-year-old in high A ball. Obviously doesn't really have much of a future with us. Greene's going to be a free agent after this offseason. Presumably he's going to be looking for more money than we'll be able or interested in paying, but at least get a look at him up close. You can see he's had a rough year for the Yankees with a 5.73 ERA, 73 ERA plus. His Sierra is 1.95, though, and his BABIP is 360. I think he's really just been unlucky more than anything. He still has great stuff, 2 fantastic pitches. Probably not anyone we're going to have for the long term, but hey, what the heck? Bring him on board and see what he can do for us right now. And to make room for Greene, we're going to send down Jake Brentz, who's had a tough year for us. 5.68 ERA over 44 and a third innings. And when you look at his BABIP and Sierra, and it doesn't seem like he's pitching nearly as well as Greene is. So certainly we'll give Greene the opportunity to see what he can do and maybe help us a little bit in the bullpen. It's not going to shock me if Matheny puts him right into the closer role, but we'll see. We'll see what the pitching staff looks like when we reset it up with Matheny. And yeah, he's moving Chad Greene right into the closer role, which is fine with us. Scott Barlow probably won't be thrilled with that, but Chad Greene's a better pitcher. And also thought about trading for Brandon Nimmo from the Mets, but they're obviously looking for two of the top prospects in our system, are the only players that they would do that for straight up. So obviously no need to do that. Thought we could potentially plug him into right field for the rest of the season and make ownership a little happier, but really nothing that we need to do. The point is to generally get younger, but certainly when we could bring on Chad Greene and only pay him 40% of what he is on the books for and not really give up much of anything for him, that deal made sense. But realistically, we're obviously not going to make the playoffs, but would prefer to be as competitive as possible, particularly in this new era where even if we, only miss the wild card by 5 games, we're going to have a shot at one of those top 6 picks given the draft lottery. So we've made it to the end of July at the trade deadline, still in last place in the AL Central, but a 47-54 record. Kind of couldn't hope for that much better than that, quite honestly, with all of the players that we've traded away. So on the field, it's been a reasonably successful season. I think in terms of finances, you can see we've got almost $23 million available for free agents with the tiny payroll. Ownership is going to make a lot of money this year, hopefully, and we've also, with the cut to ticket prices, our attendance is up 34%, our revenue per game is up 12.5%. I think ownership should be happy with us from a financial perspective, and hopefully that'll encourage them to increase our budget somewhat next year, give us some optionality to maybe bring on some players to help. We're in kind of the yellow zone in both our team record as well as right field. Again, it's the first year of our contract. We're not really worried about losing our job or anything like that, but all else, being equal, it's been a decent year. I like some of the players that we brought on for their long-term potential. Love what we've seen from the likes of Bobby Witt and Nick Pratto and MJ Melendez at the major league level. Just before we finish the episode, maybe just give a quick review of where those guys are right now. Pratto with 10 homers and 37 runs batted in and 248 at-bats, hitting .238, 111 OPS plus, 111 WRC plus, 1.2 WAR. So he's slowed down a little bit since we gave him that extension, but still very happy to have that spark plug personality with a good bat locked up for us for the next several years. MJ Melendez has stepped right into the departure of Salvador Perez, not hitting for as much power as maybe we would have hoped. 5 home runs through 171 at-bats. 246 batting average is good for a 102 OPS plus and a WAR of 0.8. So he has certainly been solid. And then all-star third baseman Bobby Witt Jr. now, 74 games played, 16 homers, 48 driven in, 256 average, 115 OPS plus, and a 2.7 WAR. So a really nice rookie year from Bobby Witt Jr., all-star at his young age of 22. And with that, we will call this an episode. It was obviously an eventful one between the draft and the trades and just getting another month in the books. Didn't play a ton of baseball, but spent a lot of time going through the draft, and then spent a lot of time making a few more trades to change the way this roster looks and to change who the Kansas City Royals are going to be for the rest of this season and the coming seasons. Thanks so much for watching. Would love to hear your thoughts down below if you have any comments and ideas on what we've done. Appreciate hearing from people. Have a great day.